Today, we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man whose vision and determination forever changed the course of history. Dr. King's dream of equality, justice, and unity inspires us not only in the real world, but also in the stories we share and celebrate. On moving panels, we often talk about heroes, fictional and real, who stand up for what's right. Dr. King was a real-life hero whose influence can even be seen in the stories we love. From the X-Men's reflection of the civil rights movement to characters like Superman, who symbolize hope and justice. It's also worth highlighting the March trilogy, a series of graphic novels co-written by Congressman John Lewis, one of Dr. King's closest allies during the civil rights movement. These comics provide a powerful and deeply personal account of the fight for civil rights, showing how non-violent resistance can create lasting change. They are a reminder of how storytelling can amplify important messages and inspire new generations to continue the work. As we reflect on Dr. King's legacy today, let's commit to keeping his dream alive, not just in our words, but in our actions. And let's remember the power of stories like those in March to challenge injustice and bring us closer together. Welcome to this Moving Panels one-shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. And if you tuned in last week to our Daredevil episode, then you already know what to expect for this one. We are talking about the Daredevil's Director's Cut. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, I'd say pause this one, go back, listen to that, and then come back. So this is kind of a continuation of part 2. But as I said, I believe at the end of that episode, we didn't want to talk about the Director's Cut too much because that would be add a whole nother 30 minutes to, speaking of adding 30 minutes, would add 30 minutes to that episode, and we didn't want to do that to make it too long, so we decided let's wait another week and we'll talk about the Director's Cut. So let's talk about the Director's Cut. So it does add 30 minutes. I think the actual runtime is 29 minutes, 35 seconds to the movie. However, it doesn't just add things, it reorders things. There are some scenes that are in a different order. As well as an entire subplot that was removed from the theatrical cut that features Coolio as Dante Jackson, who Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson have to defend. And then there is a corrupt cop played by one of those That Guy actors, Jude, I am going to butcher this last name, Cicciolella, playing Robert McKenzie, who, like, 100%, if you don't agree with me, if you see him, you'll go, hey, I've seen that guy. Can't remember what, but I have seen that guy in something.
Every time.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to kind of do this in reverse than we would do normal episode. So we're first going to say, is this better or about the same, or is it worse than the theatrical cut? I'm just going to go ahead and say it is 100% better. It improves so much on the movie. How about you, Tim?
It's definitely better. There's still some spots that I don't like, but it's definitely better. I think we'll get into it. I think it sets a better tone, a more consistent tone throughout the movie, and it's better.
Yes. Are we doing the bag it, stack it, trade it with this episode? I know a one shot, so we don't tend to.
No, we don't. You want to? Do you want to go ahead and just knock that out?
I will stack this one. Where the other one
traded
I traded
the theatrical cut. Yeah.
This one I'm stacking. It's a solid movie. I would watch the director's cut again. For me, there's no need to ever see the theatrical cut again. I
don't disagree with you on that.
It had been a long time since I've seen the theatrical cut, and I was like, oh, this is why.
How about you, Tim, if you were going to bag it, stack it, or trade it?
I think I'd probably still stack this one. I don't think it's quite bag-worthy. And I'm going to say that because, going back to the only other thing I can think of is the Zack Snyder Justice League versus which I know is a totally different scenario. Yeah. But two completely different films. So this one does add, I will say, like the Batman v Superman director's cut, I liked a lot better than the theatrical. So maybe that's a better comparison because it was the same director. But even with that one, like I'd watch either one of those again, but if I was given the choice, I would watch the director's cut of that one. Same with this one. If the theatrical's on Disney Plus, I'd have to rent director's cut. So if I'm just in a pinch, I'm okay with the theatrical. But if I had both of them in my collection, I would probably only be watching the director's cut. But it's still a stack it.
No, I 100% agree that this is the superior version. If someone said, "Hey, I've never seen Daredevil," I'd rather show them the director's cut than the theatrical cut.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that would, and then my nostalgia for Daredevil, I think it just puts it into a baggage for me, for the director's cut, just because it does make this so much better of a movie, because it helps with the flow of the movie, which we'll talk about all this. It allows us to see more of the actual character of Daredevil. So absolutely love it. So let's get into some of the changes and what we liked. So I'll mention this one first, since I just talked about it. I love that we get to see Matt as a lawyer, because in the theatrical cut, you kind of wonder, like, what do you do as a lawyer? How does being a lawyer work out for you? You clearly you weren't successful in your very first trial that we see you in. The only other, then you're late for this other trial, which we don't even get to see what happened there until the director's cut. We just know you missed being there when you were supposed to be there. And the only other thing we see you do is this random thing where you type something on a computer, print it out in Braille, and that's it. You say, "Hey, we got an hour." Like, I wanted to see more, and we got that. We got to see him actually using his ability on this other side of his life of being a lawyer, being, and trying to help out his client. And I loved getting that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I that's why I think I like this version so much better. Like, the love story with Elektra, great. I think it would have been better had Avi Arad not been a moron.
Yes.
And allowed the director to release this edition into the theaters. I think it would have been more successful. I think it would have been more. I think the critics would have liked it better. I think the audience would have liked it better. I know this movie made a lot of money in the theaters, but I think overall it would have been accepted a lot better. I think we would have gotten a Daredevil sequel. I think Ben Affleck would have had another chance at Daredevil. But because they, Avi Arad really pushed for the other version, that, he kind of, Fox did what Fox does on a lot of these movies, and they got in their own way. They meddled, and they forced the director to change stuff, and went behind the director and changed stuff.
Yeah. And that's a reoccurring theme when we talk about Fox movies.
From this era. I mean,
even now, yeah. But I know you mentioned on the other previous episode, Laramy, the theatrical was released on Valentine's Day, and I know the studio pushed for the love story to be more predominant in the theatrical version, which is why it was cut down, and they added the love scene. They added another scene, I think, in there too. So maybe that was the reason, because they're like, hey, we're going to release this on Valentine's Day. We've got to push this love story, which didn't help it at all. So
no, yeah, for those of you who've never seen the director's cut, I mean, we're spoiling what's going to happen in the director's cut. But in the theatrical, when they have the rain scene, and they're really romantic scene of the movie, and then he hears the mugging that's happening and says, "I have to leave." In the theatrical one, she grabs his hand, says, "No, stay with me," and then they have the love scene. In the director's cut, he leaves and leaves her standing there in the rain. And I think for me, yes, it's less of the romance stuff. And you could argue that, I'm sure y'all have some comments on this, the director's cut does lessen Elektra a little bit more than the theatrical version did. But to me, it adds more complexity to their relationship,
Yes.
more depth to their relationship. The fact that he does choose to leave, it's that duality that is in the comics when it comes to Daredevil, that Frank Miller especially played with, of, can he live a normal life? Can he be happy? Which I love when there are the comic book characters that deal with that. They've had stories where Batman has had to deal with that. Like, can he live a normal life? And so having him actually leave, which is one of those. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that right there is the biggest rearrangement of scenes.
Yeah.
So in the movie, we actually see the mugging that he stops. Then we see him being invited to the gala. Then we have the rooftop romantic rain scene, which leads into the love scene, which is then followed by the gala. In the director's cut, they reorganize all of that, and it makes so much more sense. They start at the romantic rain scene. He then hears the mugging. So those of you who've seen the theatrical realize the mugging he is hearing in the theatrical version is the one he has already stopped. But in the director's cut, he hears the mugging. So it's not really a mugging. It's a guy beating up another guy because he betrayed Kingpin. So we go from the rain scene, he leaves, he goes to that fight scene. Because he just left the woman he is falling in love with to be Daredevil, we then have a moment where he goes to church. And he speaks with the priest. And so we get that complexity of the character. And then after that, we get him being invited to the ball, which makes sense that he's invited to the ball because Elektra's like, I need to see you again. And so he's then invited to the ball, the gala, whatever you want to call it, and then goes. So the flow of that makes so much more sense. It makes it feel more powerful for each of those moments, because we know there's cause and effect in that. And that is what we get out of, this is just a main example, but that happens so many other times in this movie. We actually get a cause and effect, and we actually get, it helps the momentum and the flow, and it makes us understand, okay, that's why this is happening, why this is occurring. Whereas before it was just jumbled scenes.
Well, and putting that mugging back in fixes a problem, not a problem, but makes something that happens at the end of the movie make a little bit more sense. Because it also fixes the order of the end. But so he stops the mugging, he's beating up the bad guy, which they don't show in the theatrical cut. And he's just pummeling this guy, and he looks over and there's a little kid.
No, that's in the theatrical cut.
And he says, I'm not the bad guy.
Yes.
Right.
But again, you're probably forget this because of the order. It doesn't make sense in the theatrical cut.
So when he's fighting Kingpin and he doesn't kill him, even though he's already killed some people, and that is problematic, but whatever. He says, I'm not the bad guy. That line makes sense now.
Yes. Yeah.
Where then you're just like, okay, well, yeah, we knew you're not the bad guy. You're the hero of the movie.
Yeah. But even though that scene is in the theatrical cut of the boy cowering in the corner after he beats up the bad guy, you just proved that putting it in a different spot, you were able to connect the story better. And so it made for that, like I'm talking about, that cause and effect, that flow of the movie. It just made it so much better. And again, because we get to see this more in depth, this battle Matt is having with being Daredevil. We actually get to see him battle that duality, and how to handle it and how to deal with things, and we so much more. Just to throw this out too, there is a moment. I'm just curious y'all do your research, so you probably already know this. So we get a moment where Matt has a flashback to when he was a kid, and there's a nun praying over him, and he reaches up and grabs her cross, and it's just seems like a throwaway scene, but that is a very important scene to Daredevil lore. Because that actually in Man Without Fear, the Frank Miller story, that happens. There is a woman that comes and prays over him and tends to him while he's in the hospital. And he even talks about grabbing at her necklace and feeling her necklace, but he doesn't know who she is. And she leaves, and that mystery just hangs there. And this is where you go. You almost wanted this story to keep going. Because are y'all aware of who she is in the comic book?
I don't remember.
Is it her adopted mother?
No, it's his actual mother.
Actual mother, okay.
Yeah, you end up finding out that this is a nun who his father had an affair with.
Okay.
But that is his actual mother. And that was something that was then later revealed in the comic books. They actually introduced her in the Daredevil TV show on Netflix. So her name's Grace, I think. I can't remember exactly, but I think her name is Grace Murdock. But I like that they threw that in. It's just that kind of, plus it also helped build that, because in the theatrical version, you just assume straight from the beginning that Matt is religious. But the director's cut clearly makes it known that he is not. And it's part of that battle he's dealing with. And, and then later he gets, instead of being a devil, he's a guardian angel. And so, man, there's just so much more depth and so much more that you can break down about this movie through this director's cut. And we talked about how much we loved Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin. We get a lot more violent Kingpin in this one too, because right off the bat, when he's introduced, we get a scene, because it's almost a throwaway thing in the theatrical when they go, you've seen the story in the paper, somebody's talking, somebody always does. End of story. Director's cut, it's his guards, and so he kills both of them right there.
Which every bad guy ever, just randomly will kill two of his henchmen.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're always like, is that really going to inspire your henchmen to stay loyal?
No, it just
I got to tell you, in this movie, it is not good to be one of Kingpin's guards.
It just proves how evil he is. That's all it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave us, like I said, a much more violent Kingpin, which I like, because even the fight at the end was a little bit longer.
Yeah, extended, yeah.
And, and of course, I do like, though, that in the fight at the end, they do let Daredevil get a few more licks on Kingpin and not just be one-sided for so long. But, yeah, because this one, I do think the director's cut is not rated, but I think if it was rated, it would receive a rated R rating.
Yeah, because when I was reading, it was like the PG-13 and R rated version, so they're treating the director's cut as an R, which I think too was another reason why it got re-edited, because they knew that if that was if the original cut was going to go to the theaters, it was going to be R, and they didn't want that. No, so that was another reason why they cut it back.
Because you're going to grab more of an audience with a PG-13 rating, and you're going to get that. But again, luckily, we've now got movies like Deadpool and Logan that have shown you can be just as successful with rated R.
But I did read that some of the fight sequences and violence was inspired by Blade. So I think they were going for that Blade style R rating.
But originally. I do think that Daredevil was probably a little bit more known comic book property than Blade was.
True.
But, the argument we had when we did Blade was did you know it was a comic book going in? Where Daredevil, I think everybody knew it was a comic book. I mean, Daredevil doesn't necessarily have the name recognition of Spider-Man, but
But also, you see the poster. I mean, this is a comic book. This is a superhero movie.
Right.
The Blade poster didn't scream comic book superhero movie.
No.
I watched it a long time ago, and I watched a little bit of it today after I watched the director's cut. That documentary that they have on the director's cut, where they were talking about the director's cut was essentially cut and in the can and ready to go until Avi Arad and whoever that other guy was decided, no, we have to go in a different direction. and try to tank our studio, I guess. So that was what the director wanted, or at least that's what they're claiming now. I don't know how much hindsight is saying, like, yeah, well, the other one didn't do so well, so this is what we really wanted to do.
Well, I don't care. It's still
it's still better.
It's still
it's
a
still
better movie.
I mean,
I don't care when they decided that this was going to be the one we wanted. That's a better movie.
That whole scene where he decides to get in. Well, he finds out about the dirty cop because the Coolio trial had been cut, and he finds out the reason why he couldn't tell he was lying was because he had a pacemaker, which is taken out of the comics as well. But he goes to drive the Mercedes and then finds out, like, from the dirty cop that Bullseye is what he is, rather than, like, Ben Urich going, hey, you might want to go check your girl, because the dirty cop knowing it makes more sense than Ben Urich knowing it,
Yeah, I still, though, like that there was more Ben Urich actually investigating.
Yes.
Yeah. And then having the moment, having all this stuff with the prostitute murder, having the great little, hint, the clue that someone's got to figure out. It ends up being Ellen that figures it out. And I like all that stuff. Of course, I can't watch a scene or a movie where they have a mystery clue. Like in this one, it was, mom 6'8", and not think of the job from Mission Impossible. Yeah. Of you're just mislooking at the clue or misinterpreting the clue. But I do like that, just talking about again that character development in the theatrical version. Ben and Matt seem like complete strangers to each other.
Yes.
But in this movie, you actually see them building their relationship,
which makes more sense for him to decide to delete instead of print. So yeah.
And when Kevin Smith shows him the Billy Club in the morgue, and he twists it and the cane comes out. They had a scene where he had run into Ben and Ben had seen him with the cane.
Yeah.
Was that in the regular cut, the theatrical cut? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the only thing that's different in all of that is him getting the phone call from Foggy.
Okay. Yeah, because
that doesn't happen in the theatrical cut.
It struck out to me a little bit more this time of oh yeah. I mean, now I know exactly who this belongs to, because it's not like he saw a blind man's cane and went, the only blind man in New York is this lawyer. Instead it was hey, just a couple days ago I ran into a guy who had a cane that looked just like that.
Yeah. No, they still had where he picks up the cane and goes, interesting color.
And and Matt says, I wouldn't know because he's blind. Yeah.
Although that's another one of those things. So last week, Tim talked about how Elektra gets so, or you may have talked about it earlier in this episode. I don't remember when you talked about it now. But you talked about Elektra gets so intimate. How does she not recognize?
Yeah, that was last week.
That was him. That's my thing too about his cane. You're using the exact same cane,
right,
as a superhero that you are as just the blind lawyer.
And he's got multiple versions, because after the one gets taken into evidence, he's got 4 more in his closet to use. So,
well, they show that at the very beginning when he comes back to his lair or whatever. Which I also, we didn't talk about this last week, but the way he spins the locks and then just stops.
Yeah.
I'm going, no, I'm not buying that. Especially the fact that you stop them one right after the other. There's no wait now, wait now. You could have paused a minute there, Affleck. Come on. What else is there about Bullseye? So actually knowing for a fact that Bullseye survives. In the theatrical version, we get him hitting Ben's car. We get a little bit of the shake and cough, but we don't know for sure as to whether or not he survived in the theatrical cut. In the director's cut, we know it because we see him all mummified, bandaged up.
The theatrical cut had that mid-credit scene.
Yeah, it did.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But this one gives it to us right at the very
end. Yeah,
at the very end. as well as showing us Kingpin and Wesley in prison together, although how they got cells side by side, I don't know. And then also gave us where I guess we're to assume that Wesley is going to testify against Kingpin.
Yes.
We get that moment as well.
Yeah, because that was something you brought up last week. Like, in the theatrical cut, you don't know how all of a sudden all the cops know who Kingpin is.
Right.
Where in this one, because Ben figures out what he knows, or because
thanks to Foggy's help.
Yeah, Foggy calls Ben. Ben then goes to the one good cop. The good cop goes to Wesley. Wesley's like, all right, I'm flipping on Kingpin. Even though he's just seen the guy, kill some guys. So apparently doesn't really keep your underlings in line anyway.
And he's probably not real thrilled about having a cell right next to him either now. Considering that, he's turning on him. So just because, again, as strong as he is, he's just going to rip through that wall in between them to get to him. What else am I forgetting? So we got that. We get the whole Coolio side story, which I think is great. It does add some more comedy.
It does.
I know Tim liked the stuff with Foggy, and we get the scene where Foggy, because Ben and Elektra are having their fight at the playground, Ben doesn't make it to court, so Foggy has to do the entire examination, which does make you question, how did this man pass the bar?
Right.
Like, how does he have the license, whatever is needed to be a lawyer? What exactly is he doing? But I do like that we get the trial. We get to see them work. We get that whole opening statement where he actually plays with his blindness. Although I did question, I was like, do they do this every time? And if they do, is it a different judge? Because a judge would call him out on that.
Right.
If he did that every time.
Yeah. I like the, do you own a handgun? Do you ever want to own a handgun? Do you ever plan on buying a handgun? No. A shotgun, though. Shut up.
And Foggy.
The shotgun.
That's enough. That is all.
Oh, man, there's so much more spray pattern. No,
yeah. It's got that buckshot in it. Yeah. It's great. But even when he was talking about you were out with your friends and you had drank so much that you passed out. And he's like, or smoking weed.
Right.
Mostly.
Yeah. It's like you're not helping your case. Yeah.
One thing that struck out to me is that opening scene when he wakes up in the hospital is a lot longer in the director's cut.
Yes.
So the father comes in and they have their little scene.
Right.
And him saying he could hear the conversation.
Yeah. So he walks in and he goes, I'm blind. And the father goes, how could you know? I don't know. Because I woke up and I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, because I have these bandages over my eyes.
Like instead of you go, well, I heard you talking in the next room over. Like, no, like I woke up and I couldn't see. I got bandages on my eyes.
Because the last thing I saw was a radioactive biohazard barrel getting punctured and something spraying into my face. I can put two and two together. So, all right. Well, so ultimately, we all agree the director's cut is a much improved version of Daredevil, and I think all of us also agree that if you decide to watch Daredevil, if you can find the director's cut, because again, it's not on Disney Plus, only the theatrical cut. But if you can find the director's cut, then I think we all agree watch it instead of the theatrical version.
What's interesting is you can find the director's cut as a bundle with Elektra. So if you want to watch Elektra, you get the director's cut, not the original theatrical Daredevil, but if you want the bundle, you can get both of those. So,
yeah. I also discovered if you do decide to just go out and buy it, you do have to pay attention because sometimes the covers will look exactly the same. The only difference will be it'll say director's cut underneath the title Daredevil, but other than that, it's the exact same cover.
Yep.
So watch out for that too. But we'll go ahead and wrap this up for this one shot. Rate and review the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Nicholas, for talking through both the theatrical cut and the director's cut of Daredevil.
Thanks for having us.
All right. We're going to wrap things up for today for Moving Panels. I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Justice is served.